think is going on. That's not it. You need to understand that when even your check, when you're writing a check, the place where you put your name on a check, look at that line, what you're signing on, and get a magnifying glass, and you will find that's not a solid line to sign your name on. That is written, it's a typed written sentence that's been honed down to microscopic size. Get a magnifying glass and read on a check what is said where you sign your name. That's why the attorneys tell you, you better check the small print. The small print is ultra small. Where you sign your name on a check is saying something. Go back and read it. You need to understand that according to the old Phoenician Canaanite system, which we call today our educational and judicial system, there is no law in this country or in the Western world, no law, federal, state, county, city, commercial, it makes no difference. There is no law on the books anywhere in this country that applies to you as an individual creature. There is no law, because the people who designed the system thousands of years ago realized that there's two of you. There's the one that your mother gave birth to, that God created, so to speak, and even your mother didn't know what you were doing. Even your father and your mother have no idea what you're thinking or what you will do. You don't even know. So consequently, they have no control over you, your flesh and blood self. But somebody has to control this show, and so consequently, the ancient Phoenician Canaanites developed a system by which they would assign to every person a second you. And this is the way it works in America. There is two of you. Just as there are two states in this country, of every state is two states. You have the state of Nevada and Nevada State. You have Cal State, California State, and State of California. Not the same thing at all. California State, according to the law, is one thing. State of California is totally different. Has nothing to do with each other at all. It's the difference between being a lawyer and an attorney. Has nothing to do with them at all. It's totally separate words, means totally separate things. Consequently, when you understand how words and terms are used and symbols are used, then we go back to the idea of the court. And as I said, there is no law in this country on any books that applies to you. None. All law in the Western civilization applies only to cooperations, co-ops. All law applies only to corporations, period. Across the board. No other, end of sentence. Consequently, there is no law that applies to you personally, so consequently, the system has made each one of you a corporation. And how now do you distinguish which one, when someone's addressing you, that they're addressing you as the one that your mother gave birth to, or the corporate you? Very simple. According to British law, when you sign your name, upper and lower case, that is applying to your body. Your flesh and blood self is spelled, according to British and American law, upper and lower case, capital letter, lower case. That's you, your personal self. There is no law that can be applied to an upper and lower case name, period. No law at all can be applied to an upper and lower case name, because there is no law over you. Therefore, every piece of important bills, insurance, driver's license, identification, taxes, I don't care what it is. If it's a piece of business, period, in any kind of way, shape, or form, your name must, by law, international maritime admiralty banking law, your name must appear in all capital letters. You will never get a bill or anything that has your name upper and lower case, because there is no law that applies to an upper and lower case name, period. law that applies to an upper and lowercase name, period. So if Sears is going to send you a bill, if you go into Baskin Robbins or Sears and you order a pair of shoes, what are you going to do? They're going to give you a ticket, and you're going to put it on your bill, and then they're expecting you to pay the bill. And consequently, they're going to charge you. Well, that's the same thing. You go into a courtroom. They're going to read out the charges. And the cop gave you the ticket, and you have been charged with speeding or whatever. And therefore, you have to pay the charge. Well, once you understand that in America, according to our laws in America, you cannot pay a bill. Did you know that? According to international banking law, Americans cannot pay a bill. So when you say, well, I got to pay this, I'll pay that bill, well, that's a term that we use. But in point of fact, lawfully, you cannot pay a bill. You can discharge a debt. You cannot pay a bill. So consequently, you need to understand, what do you mean discharge a debt? Now it gets back to the court again. Now it gets back to the symbols and emblems of why the judge wears a black robe. It has to do with the planet Saturn. Saturn is the god that inhibits. He's the inhibitor and the law god, the god of law who inhibits, who holds back. He holds back everything and teaches you a lesson the hard way. Saturn. And women were told in the ancient world to listen to their god Saturn, who incidentally was called Lord of the Rings. Okay? And consequently, they're still making movies in Hollywood on Lord of the Rings, the planet Saturn. Women were told to listen to their god, the Lord of the Rings, so they were wearing an ear ring. Men were to get married before Saturn, their god, so they would wear a wedding ring. Consequently, the king would be crowned before Saturn. Saturn would be the round crown or the corona, the ring. Saturn, the god who is the inhibitor, the god of occult law, the mystical god Saturn, Lord of the Rings, who is in charge of and controls all occult law in the universe. This is why today we know that Saturn was referred to as El, E-L. El is a name that was given to the planet Saturn. And therefore, if you are worshiping Saturn, you represent the law, you are referred to in church today as an elder. How did you get to be an elder? You got to be an elder because you were one of the elites. How did you get to be an elite? You got elected. Because through elections, all of our system is based on occult, mystical words and terms going back to the planet Saturn, going back to the Phoenician Canaanite system of banking. Incidentally, where do you find a bank? We go to banks all the time. Where do you find a bank? Banks are on both sides of a river. They're called river banks. What does a river bank do? It directs the flow of the currency. Your money is referred to as the currency. This is why when you go to court, you have the current, electricity, because it's the juice. And if you don't have the juice, you don't have it. So if you don't have the juice, you can't capitalize. And the capital is a Latin word meaning money. There's a very sinister, frightening, interesting symbolism that has been imposed upon this country, and the people have no idea in the world what's going on. All goes back to the Phoenician Canaanite system and ancient Phoenicia, ancient Babylonian Sumeria, and this is why the work of Zecharia Sitchin is so important. This is where the kings of England get their concept of the divine right of kings. What are you talking about, divine right? All of this is part of a subject which I call ancient mysticism that dominates the Western civilization. After the change of the century, coming into 1900s, decided they wanted to expand. They got so much money and they're doing so well, they thought maybe we could expand the business, move the corporation out a little bit. Let's expand business. Let's go to Germany or Europe and open up a big corporation there and take in their corporation, their government. We'll take them over. And the Germans said, hey, Jack, it's like a mafia. What are you coming over here? You're gonna buy me? I'll buy you. You don't buy me. Like the Godfather movie. And the American corporation, British American corporation, said, unfortunately, maybe you didn't understand. Let me restate it so you understand. I didn't ask you. I'm telling you. We're moving in here. It's called a corporate takeover. And so there was a hostile corporate takeover where the American corporation decided they wanted to take over in Europe, and they didn't want to be taken over. Well, it's too bad. They take over anyway. So they called it a hostile corporate takeover. We call it World War I. So the corporation called United States was able to overthrow the existing corporate order in Europe, but it cost a lot of money. They had to build a lot of tanks and jeeps and pay a lot of people, and the corporation, well, they were successful. They did what they wanted to do, but they went broke doing it. And so when they went broke doing it, and then the bankers pulled their money out in 29, we had something called a stock market crash, because the corporation spent so much money, they went broke. So the international banker says, well, if you're broke, what are you coming to me for? I'm not going to loan you money if you're broke. And so what do you have as collateral? You got any collateral that you can put up for me to loan you the money? And the corporation called United States, the British corporation called United States, said, yes, we have the stock. We'll give you stock in the company. You are the stock in the corporation. So they give your body to the banks in Switzerland. So your body now becomes stock for the corporation called United States, because you are a money maker. Bankers came in and said, if we're going to loan you money, you guys have lost money, you guys have gone bankrupt, we're going to take care of the accounting. We're going to see where the money goes. We'll give you the money, but we're going to make it sure it goes where we want it to go. So they set up the Federal Reserve System, and then the collection agency to make damn sure that you people pay us. We're going to set up to keep a record of how much you owe us in business each week. We're going to call that the Federal Reserve. And to make sure that your stock.
As a center admin, I've seen a lot of different people come through here. We had a student come in, he signed up for the course, and
in business each week. We're going to call that the Federal Reserve. And to make sure that your stock, all the chumps out there in America working, make sure the stock pays us. We're going to make sure they pay us. You don't just tell me you're going to pay. I'm going to make sure they're going to pay. So we will set up a collection agency. Our own personal collection agency is called the Internal Revenue. So the banks, the corporation called United States, loan money to the privately owned corporation called United States. And the United States Corporation gave your body, your birth certificate, to the banks as collateral for the loan. And that's why today Americans are nothing but slaves. Now this is something I want you to understand. And you need to listen carefully, because this is profoundly important. Most people have never heard this and don't even understand what I'm trying to say. So try and follow what I'm going to tell you. There are two kinds of law on the earth, as I've said. One is called civil law, which is the law of the land, and one is called maritime admiralty, which is called the law of water. Maritime admiralty is banking law. And the law on the maritime admiralty says that you, because you came out of your mother's water, are a maritime admiralty product. This is why the ship is sitting in its berth and it's tied to the dock, and the captain has to give a certificate of manifest to the port authorities, because money is changing hands. This is why when you were born, you have to have a birth certificate. And it's got to be signed by the dock, because that's where the ship is tied to, is the dock. So the dock signs your birth certificate. Why? Because you came down out of your mother's water. You came down her birth canal. You are a maritime admiralty product, and therefore your birth certificate is signed by your mother. And where your mother signed on the birth certificate, get it, you will see it does not say parent or mother, it says informant. Your mother was informing the bank that she has just produced another product. to be bought and sold. England, the British Crown, through international banking, owns your physical body. And that's the law. You can think it's funny all you want. So the bottom line is that you are a Maritime Admiralty product. And on the back of the Social Security card will be numbers in red. On the front will be in blue or black, but on the back will be in red. The numbers on the back of a Social Security card in red designate your body. It is the serial number of your stock. And this is why if you're wealthy, you are preferred stock. If you're poor, you are common stock. But you are a stock on the stock market. Your body is bought and sold through the use of your birth certificate. And if you could get your original birth certificate back, you would find that on the back of the birth certificate are all the banks around the world. All over the world, banks have used your birth certificate because you are a stock in a Maritime Admiralty banking scheme where you make money for banks. So consequently, the corporation and government and people who want to control you, they create a second you, and that second you that they control, that they created, is all capital letters. Check it out. Anytime you get a bill, get a lawsuit, you get a fine, a ticket, somebody sends you a bill from the Department of Water and Power, check it out on your driver's license, on your Social Security card, on your insurance cards. Anything having to do with business, your name will always be in all capital letters, because only all capital letters can be dealt with by banks and government. Anytime you have a name upper or lowercase, that applies to you. I got no control over you. You sign a contract in which your name is in all capital letters, now I can take you to court. Now I can take you. As a matter of fact, the judge sits on the bench. He rules from the bench. The word bench in Latin is a bank. Look it up in a Latin dictionary. So the judge rules from the bench. Right, because he's ruling for the bank. Why? Because somebody's going to pay. It's just a game here. The Queen of England wants a cut of the American blood. She wants a piece. So it's somebody's going to pay, and the money's going to go where? Into a bank. That's right. The judge rules for the bank. So consequently, if you are working in California making money, you are then referred to as a franchisee. You're a franchisee of a foreign corporation. 1849 Constitution of California says, no California citizen will ever pay taxes in California state. Ever. There will never be a state tax in California. Ever. That's the Constitution of California. But if you say that you're a United States citizen, you're saying you work for a privately owned corporation called United States. Therefore, you are a franchisee of a foreign corporation. Therefore, you must pay the California Franchise Tax Board, not California State Tax Board. There is no state tax in California. You pay the California Franchise Tax Board because you're a franchisee of a foreign corporation on the maritime banking law, international law. You work for the Queen of England. Your butt is owned by the Queen of England in a corporation called United States, while a man called Bush is the president of the British corporation. You need to wake up and find out how this stuff really works.
Will you go straight to jail the moment you use your gun in self-defense? Many gun owners think they've got
You need to wake up and find out how this stuff really works. Because once you understand that you don't need to submit yourself as an American to a British commercial venture called courts. You're an American. You don't need to go to court. You only go to court because you agreed to go to court. When they send you a subpoena to court or a summons to court, or they've sent you something, you look at it and say, hey, Jack, that's not me. That's in all capital letters. All capital letters is a corporation. It's a corpse. It's dead. Do I look like I'm dead to you? No, I'm an American, Jack. I ain't dead. And besides, I'll go to an American system for justice. I don't need no British Grand Lodge Masonic system called courts. this British Grand Lodge Freemasonic system called Inns of Court. Comes out of England. And it has manipulated, exploited, and lied to the people. And everybody in America thinks they got to go to court. Oh, the judge is, they've sent me something that I've got to go to court. I don't go to anybody's court. I'm an American. I don't need to go to court. That's the difference between being a free man and a slave.
The banking system, or the banksters or gangsters or whatever you want to call them, have collectively, through thousands of years, have set up a situation where they can manipulate people to superimpose a legal system that is not based entirely on law, it's based on commerce. And as we'll get into it, I'll explain that we are not operating in a common law system anymore, although the common law is still here and we need to understand how to access it and how to use it to our advantage. But most people, unfortunately, are so ignorant of what the law is or what the codes are or what the statutes actually say and how they particularly apply to them. They just are used to functioning in a consensus reality that, oh, well, you know, at 18 or 16, everyone gets a driver's license, and, you know, when I work, everyone fills out a 1040 IRS tax form, or because he said, or because your parents said, or because your parents were particularly indoctrinated in a system where everyone is functioning perpetually in this let's pretend game. The whole system is set up about one thing: money, because the banks, through their politicians and legislational system, they set up a body of laws to further extract money, or set up a system that money is always flowing up. It's being extracted out of your bodies, out of your sweat equity, out of your labor. So the whole thing is based about one thing: commerce. And the system that we operate, if you understand Admiralty, it's a very esoteric system, because the banking has been operating longer than 6,000 years, probably longer than recorded history, longer than the Code of Hammurabi, etc. But the mother is a vessel, or all of us are vessels, because our bodies are a warehouse, and you live within the confines of your skin if you take the concept that you're a spiritual being. Okay, so it's an energy vessel. So the mother is a vessel delivering a product, swimming down the rivers of the birth canal, and you know, it's delivered to the dock, or the dock door. And what is it? It's delivery of a human resource, because that's all we're considered. And we're talking about money. You're a human resource. So what is money? It's energy. That's all it is. The system is set up that it's the control and flow of energy from generally the bottom up, the basis of the foundation of the people, up into the hands of the bankers that further perpetuate and dictate more laws to further extract money. And we'll demonstrate this in just a moment. So a battery is pretty much what we're considered. If anyone has seen The Matrix, you know, our bodies are our vessel. It's where we store the energy. We eat food. Its energy is transmuted from the sun. It goes up the food chain if you study biology, and the energy is stored in our fat cells. Well, take a look at this. A nursery, in essence, if we're talking to the world of Admiralty and the ship pulling into the dock and getting the port, coming into port, and we're getting all this paperwork, and it's all about money. The nursery is an energy farm or a monetary farm. It's a production house, kind of like The Matrix. You know, so we're going to go into some definitions from the Law Dictionary, what these terms mean. And I'm not making any of this up. If you look in Ballantines' Law Dictionary, a human being is a monster. So that's what, you know, when you walk into court, this is how they're looking at you. Let's take a look at what monster says. A monster is a human being by birth, but in some part resembling a lower animal. A monster hath no inherent blood, and cannot be the heir to any land, albeit it be brought forth in marriage. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Are we talking about a human being, which is in the law of Admiralty or the law of banking? We're talking about a let's pretend game. This guy, it's on a piece of paper only. That's the certificate of live birth. That's the B/6. That's the let's pretend game. The construct that is law has two kinds of people. You know, in fact, a spiritual being you won't find a spiritual being in a law dictionary, but you'll find the definition of a person. But peculiar enough, the definition of a person, they try to get you caught up with a natural person. But how do you define a word with its own word? That's a peculiarity in itself. So person includes a natural person, a firm, a co-partnership, or an association, or a limited liability company or corporation. The entire essence of the Let's Pretend game is to get you to be one of these things, a corporation functioning in a state of fascism in a limited liability world, a Let's Pretend game, where no one takes responsibility for their actions. So we get into the construct of what the physical world versus the legal world is. You have the world of land, which they try to superimpose this matrix body over, of the world of admiralty. In the Constitution, which is predicated upon common law, we deal in the world of gold and silver. What happened to that, guys? You know, now we're dealing with Federal Reserve notes, which a note, by definition, is evidence of a debt. And anyone heard of national debt? Or how about income tax? You know, all income tax does is go to pay national debt. It doesn't pay the streets. It goes to pay the national debt with the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve came into act in 1913. And that's a whole story in itself. And the taxes that are generated as a result of using Federal Reserve notes, who collects that? The IRS. When were they started? The same year as the Federal Reserve, 1913. But guess where the IRS is based out of, guys? Puerto Rico. It's not even an agency of the United States government. You know, that's a whole story in itself. So all money in society nowadays is guess where the IRS is based out of, guys? Puerto Rico. It's not even an agency of the IRS. When were they started? The same year as the Federal Reserve, 1913. But guess where the IRS is based out of, guys? Who collects that? The IRS. When were they started? The same year as the Federal Reserve, 1913. But guess where the IRS is based out of, guys? Puerto Rico. It's not even an agency of the United States government. You know, that's a whole story in itself. So all money in society nowadays is generated as a result of your potential and what you put into the system. Because Federal Reserve notes, they have no value whatsoever. They're backed entirely on the full faith and credit of the U.S. population. So without you backing these things up, they have no value at all. So in order for you to use this money in society, you have to get up and work every day and put something into the system. And what you reap, you'll sow. The system cannot perpetuate itself without you. So
I found a church for students just like me. I also found meaning, purpose, and hope by following Jesus Christ.
Cannot perpetuate itself without you. So what is the vehicle that every day and put something into the system? And what you reap, you'll sow. The system cannot perpetuate itself. Vehicle that is the courthouse. These entities or institutions or systems are the primary method or modality, or one of the primary methods or modalities by which your sweat equity is extracted out of you on a consistent basis. Traffic tickets and parking tickets are the #1 generators of indirect taxation or revenue in the state of California. Period. If you look at the numbers, you will be appalled. So, check this out. You have a courthouse, Masonic Lodge. Looks kind of similar, right? Courthouse, Masonic Lodge. You have a courthouse, and you have a Masonic Lodge. Okay, you have a judge, and you have his gavel, right? What is this? A Masonic gavel. So, what I'm trying to say, and I'm not going to get into a big Masonic presentation here, I'm just setting you up or to inspire you all to do a little investigation as to what the system that we're operating under today is founded upon. Who were the founders? Who were the founding fathers really? Were they a great bunch of guys, as we were told in our history classes? Or was there a greater plan? Was there a grand dynamic? The great work? What were they aiming to achieve? And if you do a little investigation, you'll find out that it's about one thing: business. But where does all the money go? Marvin Breyer, and that's a man that found out. Marvin Breyer is an I don't want to say Bank of America employee, but he worked for one of their But where does all the money go? Marvin Breyer, and that's a man that found out. Marvin Breyer is an I don't want to say Bank of America employee, but he worked for one of their subsidiaries. But where does all the money go? Marvin Breyer, and that's a man that found out. Marvin Breyer is an I don't want to say Bank of America employee. You'll find out that it's about one thing: business. But where does all the money go? Marvin Breyer, and that's a man that found out. Marvin Breyer is an I don't want to say Bank of America employee, but he worked for one of their subsidiaries, and he's a COBOL programmer. But where does all the money go? Marvin Breyer, and that's a man that found out. Marvin Breyer is an I don't want to say Bank of America employee, but he worked for one of their subsidiaries. And he's a COBOL programmer. And he's the guy that designed Marvin Breyer. And that's the man that found out. Marvin Breyer is an I don't want to say Bank of America employee, but he worked for one of their subsidiaries. And he's a COBOL programmer. And he's the guy that designed the foundational computer systems, or the code that I don't want to say Bank of America employee, but he worked for one of their subsidiaries. And he's a COBOL programmer. And he's the guy that designed the foundational computer systems. Or the code that transfers all money and etc. and balances the books at the end of each day. So what Marvin did is he did a little homework. He tracked the money that was being raised from the court, and where all the funds and all the money that he was paying into the court system for fines or just court docket filings, all going into slush funds, guys, without And he's the guy that designed the foundational computer systems, or the code that transfers all money and etc. and balances the books at the end of each day. So what Marvin did is he did a little homework. He tracked the money that was being raised from the court, and where all the funds and all the money that he was paying into the court system for fines or just court docket filings, all going into slush funds, guys, without exception. If you track the funds that are paid to the court, the funds are going into different accounts as opposed to where they're mandated by legislature. Instead, they go into private accounts associated with the Judges Association. However, it's funds that are paid to the court, the funds are going into different accounts raised from the court, and where all the funds and all the money is the books at the end of each day. So what Marvin did is he did a little homework. He tracked the money that was being raised from the court. If you do a little investigation, I don't want to say Bank of America employee, for all money and etc. and balances the books at the end of each day. So what Marvin did is he did a little homework. He tracked the money that was being raised from the court, slush funds, guys. Without exception. If you track the he was paying into the court system for fines or just court docket filings, all going into slush funds, guys. Without exception. If you track the funds that are paid to the court, the funds are going into, all going into slush funds, guys. Without exception. You track the funds that are paid to the court, the funds are going into different accounts as opposed to where they're mandated by legislature. Instead, they go into private accounts associated with the Judges Association. The funds that are paid to the court, the funds are going into different accounts as opposed to where they're mandated by legislature. Instead, they go into private accounts associated with the Judges Association. However, it's really interesting about what the Judges Associations are. And you can look at any court system in America, namely, we like to particularly look at Los Angeles because a lot of us originally from there, done a lot of investigation over there. But the Judges Association, if you talk to them, try to find out who they are, however, it's really interesting about what the Judges Associations are. And you can look at any court system in America, namely, we like to particularly look at Los Angeles because a lot of us originally from there, done a lot of investigation over there. But the Judges Association, if you talk to them, try to find out who they are, They're allegedly a tax-exempt organization. Because a lot of us originally from there, done a lot of investigation over there. But the Judges Association, if you talk to them, try to find out who they are, they're allegedly a tax-exempt organization. Los Angeles, because a lot of us originally from there, done a lot of investigation over there. But the Judges Association, if you talk to them, try to find out who they are, they're allegedly a tax-exempt organization. Investigation, you'll find out that it's about one thing: business. And he's the guy that designed the foundational computer systems, or the code that transfers all raised from the court, and where all the funds and all the money that he was paying into the court. You track the funds that are paid to the court. The funds are going into different accounts as opposed to where they're mandated by legislature. Instead, they go into private accounts associated with the Judges Association. However, it's really interesting about what the Judges Associations are. And you can look at any court system in America, namely, we like to particularly look at Los Angeles, because a lot of us originally from there, done a lot of investigation over there. But the Judges Association, if you talk to them, try to find out who they are, they're allegedly a tax-exempt organization. However, they're not registered at all with the IRS. Period. The Judges Association, if you talk to them, try to find out who they are, they're allegedly a tax-exempt organization. However, they're not registered at all with the IRS. Period. They fall under a 508 category. The IRS However, they're not registered at all with the IRS. Period. They fall under a 508 category. The IRS turns a complete blind eye to the fact that they haven't properly registered, but they're amassing tons of these funds. Okay? So, but you'll find out why. You go to tax court, or you go to court based on willful failure to file, or you're not paying your fair share, etc. Why you bring in proper legal arguments or issues as a matter of law, and they throw you into the wood chipper. Why? Because they're all working in harmony together, in concert. Okay, so the Judges Association, what do these guys do? They raise bonds. They create debt without taxpayer approval. So the money that is paid to the Judges Association is used to pay off anonymous bonds. Okay? The anonymous bonds are issued through Merrill Lynch and other associations. And we have paperwork that demonstrates this. Marvin got a judge thrown in jail and some prosecuting attorneys, and there's more on the way. Because, you know, you ever heard of judicial immunity? You don't sue the judge, you sue his association. Or you find the evidence of the wrongdoing through public anonymous bonds are issued through Merrill Lynch and other associations. And we have paperwork that demonstrates this. Marvin got a judge thrown in jail and some prosecuting attorneys, and there's more on the way. Because, you know, you ever heard of judicial immunity? You don't sue the judge, you sue his association. Or you find the evidence of the wrongdoing. through Public Records Act request, so you trace the money on the check, and then you present the data to the grand jury, and they got to investigate. And then they got a problem. So, as a result, Credit Suisse and Bank of America are the primary underwriters on those bonds. And a company, and they got investigated. And then they got a problem. So, as a result, Credit Suisse and Bank of America are the primary underwriters on those bonds. And a company by the name of DTC, Department of Trust Corporation, controls the bonds. But guess what? DTC is ran by the Federal Reserve board members. If you take a look at who's on the payroll, it's all a complex matrix. And how do they want you to pay? You're not using gold or silver to pay at the courts. I've tried to pay them. They don't take the stuff. I've tried to use all kinds